Good afternoon. Welcome to Entrepreneurial Live Interviews with Connie Fuksa. I had created this series of live interviews so that I could share with you people that are out there, found a passion about something, found a problem, found a need that needed to be fixed, and decided they would figure out how to share that with the world. And so these are people that just jumped out and said, I'm going to figure this out. And an entrepreneur isn't necessarily just someone who started a business, but maybe they work within a business and they've created a niche within that business as well. So this is a person that found a need, or a group of people that found a need and figured out how to fix that need and now share it. And so today I have the amazing opportunity to introduce you guys to a lady I just recently met who has one of the most unique entrepreneurial journeys and a business that she runs that I've ever experienced. And so I just can't wait for her to share her story with you. So today I want to share with you Felicia Barlow Clar. And Felicia, thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. So Felicia owns a company that's called Epilogue Tributes, but her website is Celebrating the Dash. So Felicia, share with us about you. Tell us who you are, where you come from, what made you have this idea to start this business, and tell us all about this business. I can't wait for you to share.
Okay. Well, I am a Maryland woman. I've lived here my entire life, born in New Mexico, but I've always lived here. Grew up in Montgomery County. Now I live in Annapolis. Oh gosh, what else? I have had so many different careers in my life, but in a weird way, they've all been intertangled in the entertainment and event world. So I have worked in event production and video production for more than 25 years. And when my stepfather passed away 2 years ago, and then my sister passed away a year ago, and I was the one tasked with planning their services within the family, that's when I realized that there was a need for somebody to help families plan celebrations of life. Now funeral homes plan funerals, and there is a big difference between a funeral and a celebration of life. And with my sister, she had such a unique personality that one of the things I noticed at the funeral home is they work by templates. My sister did not fit any of those templates. She was a goofball. She was funny. It just didn't fit her. So I worked with finding a lot of pictures to celebrate the joy that she was, the comedic personality that she was, and the fun that she brought to my family. So we went through the whole service. I planned it with my reverend. We planned the whole service around sad country music songs that she liked, the old classics. And then we ended it with Mr. Boombastic, which was a song that was special to her children. She made them listen to it every day to and from school. She loved the little video of Mr. Bean dancing to it. It's kind of a silly video. And I could hear her telling me that if we were going to play that song, we all had to get up and dance and just make fools of ourselves, because that's what she would have done. So that's what we did. We all got up and danced, and you could see the room light up. At the end, the people that really knew her and knew who she was all joined us in the front of the room dancing. So the service ended with joy instead of grief and sadness.
Oh my gosh, that is so exciting. Yeah. I mean, it's so cool because, we can all relate to this. We've all been to a funeral, and yeah, it's really sad. And even though you call it a celebration of life, you're sharing some pictures, but you're not really recalling and interacting the way that person would if they were sitting there with you. So this is really neat. So first, let's start by doing this. So first, let's dig in a little bit more. Tell us, how did you go from, you're working with the funeral home, these two really sad occasions. And I'm really so sorry for you about this because, this is very recent as well. But so you're going through the funeral home and you're understanding about these templates, and you said, wait a minute, there's a piece of this missing. So tell us about that thought process, those experiences, and what you've done to change the way that people go through these experiences.
Well, for me, it's about personalizing all the details. So, when they were handing us templates, because I am an event producer, I was able to ask questions about, when they're handing you the stock quotes and everything, saying, well, pick one of these and put it at the end of the video, and pick one of those and put it at the beginning. My family all looked at each other and were like, no. And I said, she used to write poetry. and she wrote children's books. She helped her children write their papers all the time. So I said, can we go pick her stuff out of her own poetry and put that? And you could see the funeral director kind of going, oh, well, gosh, nobody's ever asked us that before. So yeah, she could make a phone call and ask. So it was about asking the right questions, knowing what questions to ask, and being able to personalize it. Even my older sister helped with getting this beautiful floral arrangement made of cherry blossoms, because my sister that passed, Laura, was born in Japan, and we just thought cherry blossoms would be so representative, and it was just coming into season at that time. She died on March 25th, so that's right around the cherry blossom season. So my sister Pat was able to call a friend and get a very special bouquet made out of cherry blossoms, because that's not something a florist typically offers.
Neat.
Yeah.
So hence, this experience, you said, wait a minute, this is really not the way that people want to celebrate their loved ones. And I see an opportunity here to help people change the way that happens. So take us through that path a little bit. So now you've gone through this experience with losing your sister and deciding that you're going to make this change. You're going to do this a little bit different for her than the funeral home would have had planned, I guess. And so how did you go from there to, okay, I think this is something that's missing in the world, and here's how I'm going to make some change. So talk us through those processes afterwards.
I actually work with a great coach that helped me see the possibility in it, because when I was sharing the story of my sister, just a few weeks after she passed, and working from our spiritual vision is how we work, and we work backwards from that. And my spiritual vision is to end suffering in the world. And that, relates to so many causes, from environmental to, like, one of my passions is animal advocacy. So she helped me to see that I was helping people in that moment to end their grief, at least in that moment, their suffering in that moment. And that's what had me realizing that, we really do look more at the grief and the sadness in a funeral instead of the joy and the life that person brought. And as a storyteller, as a script writer, that was my thing, was, we really need to bring people's stories to life. You even look at obituaries in the paper, and they're typically written by somebody that did not know that person, or it could be a family member that only knew so much. And that's something that's becoming a part of the death positive movement, is people writing their own obituaries, like kind of pre-planning, because we're the ones that know our story.
Right. It's true. It seems a little uncomfortable just because it's so different than what the tradition is. But as you say it makes absolutely perfect sense. So talk to us. Okay. So you worked with a coach. And so on this entrepreneurial path, talk to us a little bit about how you went from, dealing with the situation with your sister's passing and that process. Now you're working with a coach who says, look, this is something obviously that you have a lot of passion about. And so this is somewhere that people need your help, and not just only, hey, we're going to start a business, but this is something that you feel so strongly about that you can help other people do it. So how did you jump into that next level? Like, okay, I'm going to start helping people prepare for this situation, or even after it happens. How did you jump into that? And then tell us about that process. What do you do when somebody passes and you're trying to help a family do this kind of things?
Well, the first thing I did was a little research to see if it was something that was even viable, because I didn't know what the rules were around when somebody passed. And full disclosure, I'm lucky enough to have a younger sister that's a formal funeral director, so she could help me kind of go through the bearings as to what is necessary that a funeral home do and what's not. And there's only 2 things a funeral home is required to do, at least in the state of Maryland. So everything else is left wide open. So I started doing a lot of research. I came upon the death positive movement, which is all about, like, talking about mortality and our fear around death. And this was a year ago. So this is before the pandemic that I was looking at all this stuff. And this movement has been around for, I'd say, like the last 8 to 10 years. And it is trailblazers wanting to shift the conversation around mortality and around death. That, like, for me, I consider it when we embrace death, when we embrace mortality, it really is a reverence for life. It's like it almost gives us permission to live our lives with much more joy, excitement, adventure.
Mm-hmm.
When I started looking into this movement, and I found so many practitioners out there doing a lot of alternative things to the funeral industry. You know, like one of the things I learned was that, I mean, of course, death was a home-based stage of life prior to the Civil War, and the Civil War changed all of that, and then it kind of went down that cycle and got monetized and sterilized and then spent with strangers. And so this movement kind of brings it back to even having home funerals. And it's interesting because when I started looking at my past, my mother and I actually did a home funeral 15 or so years ago for her best friend who passed. So it's just interesting how we can look in our past and go, wow, you know, everything sort of comes together at that pivotal moment when it's supposed to. And that's how I feel with this. It's like my spiritual journey met, you know, past things I'd done, my event production. So it seemed to be the right thing. And as I looked into this as a niche, I found like maybe 2-3 other companies across the United States that were doing this. And I was going to go into wedding planning or doing more corporate events. And I realized, no, this is a real niche and this is something people need because event planning is really hard. It's very stressful. Event planning when you're grieving is like, it's just unnecessary. It's something that I want to help people kind of get through that moment of grief. They should be spending it with their families and not worrying about collecting pictures and producing videos. And, you know, for some, it may be a little cathartic and they can help in the process, but I just don't think that they should be given a list of things. I was given a list by the funeral home. Here's all the things you need to submit to me in the next week.
Yeah.
So that's what to shift the whole thing. When the more I got into it, the more I realized it was a real need out there.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, like I said at the very beginning of our interview, I mean, I find this so just amazing and curious because this is truly a niche that, you know, you don't really think about till you have to have it. And I think you and I shared off camera that I had an experience a year and a half ago, a good friend of ours passed and I was helping with those things. And going through that is so, it's just so systematic. You're absolutely right. I mean, and I guess part of it is out of necessity because you're like, all right, I don't have the brain power to put all this together. But somebody like you comes in and helps you, you know, weed through it all and make it a celebration. How magical is that? So talk to us a little bit about the process of what you do. So when, you know, somebody contacts you and what's the process look like? What do you actually do with them?
I have it in 3 stages, which follows a production timeline. There's pre-production where I would sit with the family and we would call through photos. I would listen to family stories and gather all the information to put together the life story. If the person had already passed, you know, what I would like to eventually really get into is helping people plan before they pass. And that could be, you know, even a 30-year-old who has, you know, thinking of that they may pass, you know, 60 years from now. But in the moment, if it's with a bereaved family, I would do that. I'd sit with them and then I would go and plan the whole event, you know, hopefully around catering. I would like to pick a venue that matched the person's personality, an officiant. If they don't have one, I certainly have a lot of officiants I know from my spiritual community. And then the day that we do the celebration, I would be there on site to make sure everything is happening as it should. I would say it's very similar to planning a wedding. It's just...
That's what it sounds like. It's really intriguing because it sounds like, yeah, I mean, until you said that a little while ago, I hadn't really thought of it being like an event, and it really truly is. It's just, we have the funeral home actually doing that planning and it's very systematic. So this is very interesting because if you think about the celebration of your life, it's a big event. It absolutely is a big event, no matter who does or doesn't want it to be. And it's as big as, if not the same kind of thing as planning a wedding. So it's really interesting to bring that up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I love this. And I love that, you're sitting with so I imagine when you're sitting with the family, you're going through, particular processes. They're gathering pictures. You're talking about music. You're talking about the person's life. You're listening to stories. And then you go into jumping in and actually start creating what this event is going to look like. And then, then there's some interaction with the family. Okay, we're doing this and we're doing this. And this is, is this the right path? Since you don't know the person, you may not have ever met the person.
Right.
Yeah, very interesting. Very interesting. So let's talk about the business side of this for a minute, because, you've done a lot of different things, as you said. And one of the things I like to share on this particular series, just like you brought up a little while ago, is some of the past, some of the things, some of the processes, successes, and struggles maybe that you've gone through as you're building this business. And one of them you started right out with talking about having a coach. And I love this because, of course, I do business coaching, and that's one reason that I love to talk to people about these kinds of things, because there's so much intermingling about, the way that different things are done. But one of the things that I liked about you saying that is that people don't realize on their entrepreneurial paths that they're not alone. There's people out there that have been through where you want to go, and they're the ones that give you the best experiences and information and help. And so you worked with somebody who helped you see this vision of something that you struggled with into the magic that it is now for you.
Yes.
Yeah. Talk a little bit more about your coaching experience with because I'm curious how, everybody has a different experience in that area. And I'm just sort of curious how you went through, what made you decide to work with a coach? How did you pick somebody to work with? And then, some of the experiences that you've had with that.
Well, that's interesting, because that's part of the entrepreneurial journey. Is I've had, I'd say at least 3 or 4 different coaches that have helped me in the last 20 or so years. Mm-hmm. And what I find is there is such a distinct style that each one has, and a distinct offering that each one is doing. Like I worked with one back in 2006 that was all about the internet and doing everything online and creating sales funnels online. And that was sort of, maybe 10 or so years after all of that had started, and people were getting wealthy that way. So I was like 10 years behind the curve. So that one didn't really work for me. Then I worked with marketing coaches, and oh gosh, I'm trying to think the last one before this one. I can't even remember. But this one, what rang for me was he is all about mindset. And that's what I get, is that mindset is 80% of everything we do, but especially business.
So talk about that for a minute with me, because that's one thing that I think is very intriguing that entrepreneurs just don't understand and don't see, is that, you can talk yourself, all of us can go through any experience as an entrepreneur at any time in our career and talk ourselves in or out of anything. And, all it takes is one bad phone call from somebody, or one bad experience, or one great experience, and it defines your next steps. And so talk about that mindset just a little bit, because I think this really speaks to this entrepreneurial journey that we're constantly talking about on this series.
Mm-hmm. It's a lot of what we talk about is making new decisions. Like, if I had a fear of rejection, it's about shifting that conversation to, like, one no doesn't mean everybody's going to say no. Or, like if we don't feel like we are the right person for the job, like imposter syndrome is a huge thing for entrepreneurs.
Absolutely.
And the thing that I really love about the people I'm working with is the spiritual aspect underneath the mindset, which is that if the idea came to you, then it's yours to have, and you have everything that you need to make it happen. And you may not have it right there in that moment, but you just take that first step, and then you take that second step, and the third step, and the fourth, and you will have it. So in a way, it just made me realize there really is no such thing as imposter syndrome with entrepreneurs.
I love this. So I like this imposter syndrome, because this is so common. And again, it's the same conversation, the same thought of you, all of us may think, oh, well, I'm not as good as such and such. Maybe you're a realtor, or maybe you're an event planner, and you're not as good as somebody else that does it, because you think, oh, they've been doing it longer than me, or they know more, or they have more contacts, or they went to school and have more education, and all of these things. That's what creates that, as you called it, very well. It's very well known as the imposter syndrome. And, you know, the thing that I want to point out is there's so many famous people that are so successful that have gone through this, and you can read about them time and time again. I most recently, honestly, read about Oprah Winfrey's experience with imposter syndrome. And it's so interesting because this is a real thing, and entrepreneurs have it every single day. You know, I mean, there's somebody that you can let influence your thoughts every single day. So getting yourself constantly in the right mindset is really important. Thanks for sharing that. That's really good stuff. So talk to us a little bit about, as you're going through this entrepreneurial journey, whether it's this business or other things that you've experienced as you've gone along, maybe some things that you learned that you just didn't realize you didn't know until you started doing it. Like, you know, some of the tools that you would needed to have, or some of the people that you needed to have in your corner, or some of those processes that maybe you didn't even know you needed until you started doing these things. Because I find that with entrepreneurs all the time, that they get involved in their business or their activity that they want to do and then go, oh, shoot, I didn't even know I had to pay quarterly taxes, or I didn't know I need to have a business license, or I didn't know. So talk to us about some experiences that you've had that maybe you were those, oh, shoot, I didn't know kind of things.
A big one for me is event insurance. There's a lot of times I go, oh, right, I guess I need to go get a policy. And, you know, sometimes it's like the day before the event. If I'm doing a one-off, because that's how it works in film and event production sometimes, is you just get a policy for a day.
Gotcha.
So that's a big one for me, is to always kind of go, oh yeah, I need to get an insurance policy just in case.
Right. Interesting. That's a good one. I mean, you know, not having talked to a lot of people that do events, that wouldn't seem so common. I wouldn't even have thought of such a thing. And that's exactly why we have these conversations, because there's so many things, you know, if you own an office space, well, you need to have some insurance in case somebody trips and falls or whatever. You're having an event, you're running the event, so you need to have some kind of insurance. I would never have thought of that. That's a really good one. Absolutely. How about some other experiences that you've had, maybe that you said, oh gosh, I didn't know I needed to do that?
Well, I mean, I've worked in a lot of different scenarios with trying to create a business.
Yeah.
You know, I worked prior to this in corporate events, and I worked with somebody in the Annapolis area for 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
To build a huge project that was going to be over in Crownsville, and that one just completely fell apart because of politics. So yeah, like realizing that can play a part in it. And if, like with that, it was kind of solely in this other person's hands.
Mm-hmm.
And I really didn't have a choice, but because it was so big, but to be completely on board with that and not able to do anything else. So that was a big learning lesson, is to not put everything else in somebody else's hands. I learned a lot from being in that position and watching her work. And I mean, she was one, talk about somebody that wouldn't take no for an answer. And that was a big learning lesson for me, was to go, you know what, that's a good skill to have. So
and this is great information to share, because these are things that people just don't think about, that are, you know, I mean, you learn these things from people that you maybe a coach, or that you consider as a mentor, or that you look for resources to be able to build your own skills. And that there's another excellent way, is working with someone else, partnering with someone else, and not realizing, hey, some of these pieces that maybe you need, or that you want to make sure you don't need, or that you don't have, or that you don't act on. So that's really good information. I appreciate you sharing that. So tell us a little bit about how someone works with you. So does someone just call you on the phone? Do you how does one get to work with Felicia?
They can call me, or they can go to my website, which is celebratingthedash.com, and on the contact us page, there's a way to register for 45-minute free consultation, and we can kind of get a feel for what it is they're looking for. Like I had somebody contact me last week that wants to do a celebration for somebody, her cousin that passed 5 years ago. So yeah, like I thought that was nice. So we'll do a consultation and just see what it is they're looking for. And of course, you know, right now things have been, as far as events, a little more difficult to do. So we can do a virtual. Somebody gave me the name of Zoomeral service. Very good. Very good. Zoom is made for name, hasn't it? Yeah. So
That's really cool. Okay, so how did you come up with the name of your business, Celebrating the Dash? That's really interesting.
there's a poem out there, I guess a poem. It's a writing called The Dash. And if you've not read it, it's lovely. It's about the life that we live between birth and death, which is the dash on a tombstone. And that's where I kind of got the inspiration for it, was we really need to celebrate that life that's lived between the birth and the death. So
Nice. I love that. And that's exactly it. It's not just a celebration of life kind of event, but celebrating what happens between that whole window, not just what just happened the last 6 months or a year or whatever. So that's really interesting. Very cool. Tell us what your website is.
The website is celebratingthedash.com. My company name is actually Epilogue Tributes, and I got that because being a storyteller, I thought epilogue was the final, the end. So
yeah. So somebody can reach out to you by finding you on your website, and then set up with a consultation and decide, if there's some things that you can do to help them make this a really special event. Tell us, if I was an entrepreneur starting out today, or even if I'm somebody who's in my business and I'm just like imposter syndrome, or negative Nancy has hit me and I just can't get out of the rut, out of the mud puddle, whatever you choose. Tell me your go-to piece of advice for an entrepreneur.
My go-to piece of advice has to come from my coaching too, which is around a suffering state or a beautiful state. And that when you are in a suffering state, it's not real. It's usually something that we've made up in our head. I went through one last week about something that I didn't do something right, and I had to completely just step back in the first 5 minutes and go, okay, is that real? Is that really what happened? And that's how I get over a lot of hurdles now.
I love it. That is fantastic. I mean, really stepping out of the middle of being in that swirling whirlpool and realize that maybe that isn't really exactly how it happened. Or even if it did, could you have even done anything differently? Probably not. You did it the way that you best knew how to do it, and you have to move on. And maybe you learn from it, maybe you don't. I love it. That's really super good. So tell us about, Felicia, do you have any special charity love that you want to share, or do you have a special in your business going on right now? Or is there something that you want to share with us about you that you want everyone to know?
Well, I have a few things. My first thing is I'm creating workbooks for end-of-life planning and celebration of life planning. So that will be something else that will help people pre-plan. My other thing is, I'm a big philanthropist. I'm involved in so many different charitable things, and I advocate for a lot of different things. One of the things that I'm really passionate about is our local SPCA and helping rescue animals. So that would be something I would encourage people to rescue a pet, especially now. Great company to have. And the other thing, that coming from the film and video world, I have a page on Facebook that is for women in film, video, and entertainment and the arts, where I support. Right now we have more than 14,000 members. I love to help support women grow in any kind of endeavor having to do with entertainment and the arts, because we are so underrepresented in everything.
That's fantastic. Wow, some really great areas. But I love the workbooks too, because that's a really special way for all of us to start thinking about, we want to, we always all kind of comment about, oh, I don't want to be cremated, or, oh, I don't want to this, or, oh, I do want to this. And you hope your loved one remembers what you're talking about. But this is a great way to try to build your story before somebody else has got to try to figure it out on their own when they're really suffering that you're gone. So I love it. The workbook sounds like a great plan. And we can find those on your website soon.
Soon, yes. And I guess my whole thing is about ending suffering, and helping your family by planning ahead will help their suffering that they have when they're grieving. Yeah.
Well, instead they're grieving, and at least then if you've already planned some stuff, it makes it a whole lot easier on them, for sure. Absolutely. That is wonderful. Absolutely wonderful advice. So guys, we've added in the comments information on how to reach out and get in touch with Felicia if you need to. It's in the comments below. So her website's there. All that information is right there below. Felicia, I can't thank you enough for all your time today. It was so interesting. I really enjoyed talking to you and loved being able to share your story today.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. It's nice to meet you.
Awesome. Thank you very much. You guys, This was another one of our Entrepreneurial Live interviews, and with a really strong, powerful lady who saw a need and is just taking care of helping people end suffering when their loved ones pass. So I encourage you to reach out and speak with Felicia and find out a little bit more about her business. If you want to find out more about how to work with me, how to get on the interview series, how you can do anything involved with the interview series, we're taking sponsors now. We have all kinds of things going on with the interview series. If you want to be involved in that, reach out to me on my website, conniefuksa.com. Very simple. And let's talk. Let's figure out how we can do that. So thanks so much for taking the time to tune in today. Check out our next Entrepreneurial Live interview with Connie Fuksa coming up soon. Felicia, thanks again for your time today. I'll talk to you soon. Bye, everybody.